Hey everybody, welcome back to Tavern Talks. Tonight we are at episode 145 with a very good friend of mine, the Forever DM. Um, we met what, 3 years ago almost?
Yeah, about
Yeah, it's
that.
been a
I want
minute.
to say shortly after
Um,
I started this page, I think we kind of connected, and then with Mysticon last year, definitely started uh chatting and like kind of supporting, even more so at that point.
right. Yeah, no, and yeah, and you see where he's gotten and where I have. I'm so far behind. I got to catch up.
You're good. You're good.
Uh,
You got the Hawaiian shirt, bro. Like
I
I don't I
do. I
don't
do
got
have the Hawaiian shirt. We'll talk about that later. That's
that.
not
It's a
what
give
this
and
show
take,
is
right?
about. What's that?
It's a give and take, right?
It's a give and take,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah.
an ebb and flow.
Yeah, you got all the cool followers, and I get the Hawaiian shirt. I think we'll accept that. Hey everybody,
I'm
how's it going? It looks like we got some pop-offs off in the chat room already.
nice.
Yeah. So real quick before we start diving into kind of just the questions of the night, and as always, this is a open forum. So for those sitting in the chat room, make sure if you have questions to drop them into the chat. But yeah, uh, give us a little breakdown of like what the Forever DM is.
Oh
What you got
man.
going on?
So crap. So I'm Chris Peters, the Forever DM. I've been running games for I would say about as long as we've known each other. So I want to say like 2.5, 3 years is how long I've been DMing games. It kind of all started with one of my concurrent players, Quentin. We were stationed together in Okinawa, Japan, and I played at his house a couple times, and he ran the games for me. And I grew up playing like second edition or advanced D&D and like a couple other TTRPGs with my stepdad growing up. And so I was familiar with it. And so he asked me, but I hadn't played since I was a kid. And so he's like, "Hey, dude, you want to come over this weekend and play Dungeons and Dragons?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, dude, absolutely." Went over his house, played a few times, and he ended up PCSing back to the States. Um, and so whenever I PCS here to San Diego, we had been in contact the entire time, but he was like, "Hey, dude, let's go play D&D. There's this thing called Adventure League games. You can drop in for one shots, and let's go do it." And so like, took advantage of the situation, went a few different times with them. And then we were both like, "Hey, like we want to do this, but like I want to do this thing that they don't necessarily like allow, or it's not, kosher in Adventure League, or we want to do this a little bit differently." And both of us were like, "Well, we should do our own thing." And in that conversation, he had always ran my game. So I was assuming that he was going to run the game. And then he was like, since it was a mutual conversation, he thought I was going to run the game. At this point, I'd never ran anything before. And so we were both like, "Yeah, let's do that." And then it sat at like dead silent stalemate for like months. And like I would check in and be like, "Hey, dude, so how's that campaign coming?" He's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I thought you were doing it." And it kind of then it like died down again, and then sat for like another few weeks, and then eventually I was like, "You know what? No clue what I'm doing. I'll do it." And then just picked up the Strixhaven book, and then got a group together and ran that. And then started at my kitchen table. I remember the first like map set that I did. I was talking to my players about this the other day. The first map set that I did was a dry erase map, and I had like these moss clumps on it, right? I was so stoked, dude. I was like, this is D&D right here, with these like cheap Dollar Tree like moss clumps. At the time, beyond, it's still to this day, I'm proud of that. But like,
Hey,
and
we all have a humble beginning. Like that's kind of
right,
where it's at, right?
exactly. And then it's just kind of like step by step escalated. um Went from my kitchen table to my garage, built my own table. Was playing with like those of you guys that have like seen the previous streams and stuff like that, like the sheets around and everything. That's all in my garage. Converted it into a play studio, and then moved about a month ago now. And then was like, "I'm gonna do this the right way." And then now built all this. I showed you a little bit ago, James, but yeah. So now I'm sitting in a full dedicated D&D studio, and then it's just like really fallen in love with the community, really fallen in love with every little niche of this hobby, like from
Mm-hmm.
crafting my own terrains, from 3D printing, from sculpting out of styrofoam, from the community, the all the amazing people that I've met in it, the convention planning, all that kind of stuff. So really just kind of dove into it and then received that same level of support back from everybody. So it's just kind of one of those perpetuating things that it feeds the beast. And I'm like, all right, let's do more. What's next?
Absolutely. And I think that's the main key of what has been kind of the growth for pretty much any channel over the last, I don't know, probably 2, 3 years minimum, is that this
Yeah,
this community continues to just feed off of itself, right? Like there is no, it doesn't stop. It's, if I'm helping you, then you're helping me, and we're helping this person, and that's going on to this person and whatnot. Um, and it's such a neat opportunity because there's so many other places in the world and in even in other industries where that's almost looked frowned upon or dangerous because
yeah,
it's potentially going to affect their revenue or their
yeah,
passion, where this is what this is built off of. If you don't
right.
collaborate, you're really not doing Dungeon Dragons right. um
Exactly.
so no, I love
Well, and
it.
it's such a cool thing because like, and you hit the nail on the head with it. It's like almost like in any other industry, that competition is like, oh, I've got to be the best at this. I've got to do this. In this niche group, it's almost like, yes, there is competition, but it's like the competition drives each other. It's like, oh, you did this, okay, cool, like watch, hold my beer, watch this, and then it's just like feeding off of each other, like, oh, okay, now I gotta do here, now I gotta go here, and it's
Yeah,
like, and then throughout the entire process, both of the everybody involved is like, hey, like this is amazing. And even
right.
those that you see as your competitors, you find yourself like congratulating them on doing really amazing things. And then in the back of your mind, it's like that perpetual like Goku Vegeta relationship,
Right. Yeah, that
right?
makes
And
perfect sense.
it's so amazing to me.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think is like it we were talking about this. I think you were trying to mess around with your camera at the time. But like it even happened at GaryCon this last weekend. Like some of the people I was able to speak to are larger in the industry, but they're like, "Oh no, I know who you are. Like you're doing these cool things over here, you're doing these cool things over there," and I'm like, "No, I'm just me, just little old me."
I
Um, but then it was the opportunity to then give that same accolade back to them, even though like
yeah.
they might be celebrities in this industry, but they didn't push it as that,
No.
and it was such a cool opportunity. Um, you're right. Morden KT's magnificent minis just put it. Our little community is honestly the best.
Right? It really is. I can't see the chat. Here we go. Here,
Can you
here
not
it
see the
is.
chat on
Let me
on
see.
Twitch?
Oh, I gotta. Oh no, I gotta pull it up on Twitch. I'm just on the other one. Never mind. Hold on.
Oh yeah, Zoom's not going to show
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're
it.
right.
So you answered a question of mine that I had assumed because you and I had talked before, but
Yeah.
it did gives me a bit of an understanding of how and why you run your games the way you do. Um, but I'm going to ask you the other two questions. So
All right. Let's see.
what? So you said you've been playing D&D for a while. What is a while to you? Like when did you start?
Oh man, I want to say I think I first started playing with my stepdad when I was like 10 years old.
Okay.
So 25 years.
Okay. So that breaks things down a little differently then, because I'm noticing this, and we've talked about this before on our show, that there's two different groups of people that show up. We have ones that are kind of like you and I,
Mm.
who have been playing for 20, 30 plus years at this point. It's crazy. I think
Right.
crazy like that.
The
I'm not
grays in
ready
our
to.
beard. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how many
I
years
I
we've
got
been
enough gray
playing.
in my beard for everybody on this channel. It's fine.
Right.
Uh, but and then we get other people who are like, oh no, I didn't pick it up until like right before or right at the pandemic. So then you have this like
Yep.
3 to 5 year gap. Um, But what's interesting is that what I'm seeing, how you're talking and what you do in this space, it's interesting to see that you are so involved with the extra aspects of Dungeons and Dragons, being from a tradition where 25 years ago, we played with we played with little stick figures
Yeah.
and standees
Or
and things like
not
that,
even that.
or
Like it
not
was
even that, or I
all
just
theater of the mind.
exactly. And going to that deepness of where you're at now, where you're like, no, I build my own terrain, I do my own minis, I do all this stuff. I've got an entire studio. Um, it's interesting to hear that because a lot of times we don't hear that with the older crowd of
Older crowd.
players,
I can see
um,
that.
unless you're like Stefan, who built his entire life around it. So there is
It
that.
becomes your
It becomes your
identity.
entirety, and I have already funded Stefan's paycheck at least 3 times this year, so it's or last year, so it's okay. um, they're still on their way in, and we're gonna do a big old unboxing for those two. Get two new sets
Nice.
that are coming. Um, so, what though caught your attention? Like, what is the spark that maybe you were like, no, it goes from, oh, this is a cool game to like, oh, wow, this is something new. This is something different. This isn't just what I thought it was.
I think, okay, so one of the backgrounds of like my professional expertise is in curriculum development, training management, and stuff like that, right? And so whenever you go through trainings and you go through like learning the process of how students, how people, not even how people learn and digest and receive information, right? You've got your oral learners, you've got your visual learners, you've got your kinetic learners. And that's just, and so if you look at that principle across the board and you realize how it is that people digest or ingest information, and how it sticks with those. And like, so taking that element of my personality and applying that in a hobby and in a passion that one, I will say my entire life, I've never had a single artistic bone in my body. Like stick figures was
Look at that
the
thing
best that
behind
I
you,
could
though.
ever
Like,
do.
look at that thing behind you.
Right. I got gifted I think it was Game Masters, like their terrain set a couple of years back. And it's just like it came with a little styrofoam cutter and some like half-inch like styrofoam and like a little workbook of like how to make, a basic tile dungeon stuff. And then I was like, okay. And then like I read through and was like, hey, that was kind of fun. Like, let me do this. And then like made my first like dungeon tile set and then was like, oh, like that wasn't too bad. Let me make some battle maps. And then made these like, and then it just kind of like grown from there. And
Right.
it's like found like this like creative outlet, artistic niche for that side of it, right? And so I guess kind of reeling it back to what I was saying is that finding a way to appeal to every aspect of the way that anybody that sits at the table ingests information, whether it's they're looking to
Mm,
see something, or whether they're listening for a compelling story, or whether they want something that's hands on. And it's like it means so much more if I can, pass around a prop or something like that, and trying to hit all those wickets so that no matter who it is that sits down at the table, they are able and provided the opportunity to get something. Because one of the things that I'm a people person.
mm,
And so being able to provide an atmosphere that, and one of the reasons I wanted to get this done, the way I'm working on it is that like everyone, 2025, everyone's going through something and whatever it is. And so being able to provide a story, a place, an environment that your friends or, people that are going through a hard time can kind of escape from it all. And then appealing to how it is they ingest that information that you're telling them allows me to provide my friends an opportunity to kind of forget whatever it is that's going on in their life and enjoy sitting around a table with their friends, having fun and escaping themselves and allowing themselves to reset their own realities by kind of just having that a little mini break for a few hours a week kind of thing. And so being able to help my friends out, being able to be there and provide something for them that is, compelling and interesting and engaging, um, kind of drives me a lot. Even if I wasn't able to succeed in that, at least from my point of view, the effort of trying to do that and be that for someone else is one of the main reasons that I really, really enjoy doing this. And then it's just like I said, finding out like, hey, like I can't draw for my life, but as soon as my brain starts spinning D&D wheels, it's like, oh yeah, build a 24-inch tall castle with a dungeon hidden in the bottom of a mountaintop. Like, yeah, I can figure that out, kind of
I can
thing.
figure that out though. I can't
Like,
draw for shit, but I can figure
no,
this out.
I apparently I can make a mountain out of styrofoam with a hidden dungeon
Yeah.
floor in it, kind of thing. But don't ask me to draw what it looks like.
So let's
Um,
let's let's take that real quick. I'm gonna hit on that point that you
yeah,
just said is so Mysticon was last year.
yeah.
Funny story about this. Nobody else knows about this other than me and Chris. A day before we leave, I find out I'm running 3 games because one of the guys are not going to. I'm running a game because none of the guy that's supposed to run it wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, you got sick or something.
He got COVID,
Yeah.
so he wasn't going to make it. Well, he calls me. I'm already asleep. Lights are already off, and I get a video call from Chris, and he goes, "All right, I got a crap load of stuff laying in my garage. Let's see if we can put your map together." And we're literally just video. He's video camera walking me through his stuff, and I'm like, "Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. That'll work. Bring that." Um,
You're like, do you have a tree, but like
yeah,
a
like
cross section of a tree that I could use as a map? And I'm like, actually, hold on, let me
he's like, "Actually,
like
hold on.
this.
Let
He's
me
like,
show you. That
yeah,
works."
like,
So yeah, it was definitely a different response than I had expected, but it was such a funny opportunity to be like, yeah, all this stuff that I just randomly build because I've needed it for one time or every other or 2 or 3 times. It's like it's
right.
still here. It's like I still have access to it, and it worked out wonders.
Well, it's
Uh,
like that last big map that I built, right? So, mind you, this thing is like 4 feet wide by probably 2.5 feet deep. The mountain is 8 inches tall. The castle on top of it is 16 inches tall.
wow.
Different pieces. There's a dungeon built into it. Like I spent a good like 40 hours on this thing. It's all like lit up with LEDs and drop-in lights, all this kind of stuff, and like I was like burning the midnight oil on it, right?
Yeah.
And then like I finished it and was like, I stood back for a second and I was like, yeah, that's cool. And then I was like, where the hell am I gonna put this now? uh, well,
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing with terrain is right is it's like not only do you got to figure out what
storing it.
terrain, but where am I storing it all? Especially when you
And that's
don't
why like
have the breakdown stuff.
right. And that's why
So,
like a lot of the stuff that I do, there are a few pieces that I've made that are very like niche specific.
mm,
Like this is intended for this purpose only, but a lot of the stuff that I make, I try to make like double-sided or like universal enough. Like I'm working on a couple pieces right now in the workshop. And they're like cliff walls, but like so one face of the cliff wall is like a stony cliff wall,
yeah,
but then the backside is going to be something else. So it's like, okay, this may take up a little bit more space, but I can utilize it for
in a different
multiple
way.
different like reasons.
That's awesome. And then you've already technically answered the third question, which is when did you pick up the mantle for game master?
Oh
Because
yeah.
you had to. You didn't have a choice.
Yeah, it was thrust upon me, right? And it was really
Yes.
funny because like getting into the community and just listening to like different monikers being thrown around, and like the Forever DM is like one of those monikers in the community that's like everyone says like, "Oh, I'm the Forever DM. I'm the like, you know what I mean?" And
Yeah.
so when I created the social media accounts, I was like, let's see if it's available. Like 100% didn't think it was going to be available.
Right.
It was like Papa was like, "Oh,
Nobody's claimed it.
okay, all right, sure, let's do that."
Yeah. And that's awesome. Um, and I think I think it definitely just shows the passion that you have though by calling yourself the Forever DM, because it's not just a story, it's the props, it's the backgrounds, the music, it's the lighting, all of that. So,
9 foot stone walls made out of styrofoam.
but it doesn't. The cool thing is though, is like even on the screen right now, like I could, other than you telling me it's styrofoam, it
Yeah,
looks like stone. Like
right.
it doesn't look like crazy stone, but it still
Yeah,
looks like a stone, like you were making it out of stone.
yeah.
So, which is awesome.
I like it. I'm happy with
Yeah, no, you
it.
should be happy with it. And I mean, you definitely deserve it. Question is how long it took you to build that.
That wall,
Yeah,
that wall took me the same let more time than the two walls that I built from scratch, framed, drywall, painted, mudded. I want to say that wall alone probably took me a good like 30, 35 hours.
yeah,
I framed the two walls that I built in like maybe 3 hours kind of thing. And then drywall is easy to hang and the panels and stuff like that all went up quick. This monstrosity took the majority of the time for this whole build.
that's awesome.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, and then there was like the scary part of like measuring and dry fitting, right? So this is just a piece that I cut out. Like this is the actual wall of the house. And
yeah,
so, and then like I had already built up these two walls. And so as I'm building these 6 sections in over there, I'm like, okay, I have to like dry fit it and pray and hope that it actually fits together whenever I get it in there. And I like, so there was a very clinching moments of like when I finally got the pieces all cut and I was like,
yeah,
all right, I gotta dry fit this because if this doesn't work and I just wasted like 20 hours of cutting all this, I'm gonna cry.
I'm gonna
Like,
cry. I mean, best scenario would have been just more terrain.
right?
Like
No,
you,
exactly. Yeah, I made it work.
um, Figure, you got any questions? You're quiet tonight.
No, man, it's just a lot to take in.
Yeah,
But I also know you two already have a lot of history, so I'm just letting that happen.
I wouldn't say
No,
a lot of history, but like, yeah, we definitely
A
have
good bit of like
definitely been down
ample
with that.
like brushed upon and like realize this thing. I think like because before the convention we had talked a few times, and then
Right.
at the convention when I picked you up at the airport, and it was just like one of those moments and like in Step Brothers, and you're like,
Yeah. Eh? Eh?
all
you
right,
just
and like
click, yeah.
realize like how much
I
like
get you.
similarity there was. We were like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, cool.
Yeah, no, and you find a lot of that in this community. At least I figured that out. That page,
Yeah, you
uh,
did.
just
Yeah, you
Absolutely.
did.
yeah.
Um,
Um, no, one thing I'll ask you though, since you've been doing DMing and whatnot for a while, and this is kind of like one couple of the questions that I've been asking is,
Yeah.
how do you how do you tend to keep your players interested while gaming? Because I know that can be an issue at times, especially if you're playing for long sessions where you've got, multiple sit downs you're going through.
Um, I would say like little things that I do, especially like in combats, right? So, we'll say like in combats and then in other, non-combative situations for games specifically, is like even though technically like a round of combat is 6 seconds, but to keep the other players engaged, I will encourage things like if it's, this player over here's turn and then there's something happening across the battle map, I will have this player like, hey, roll me a perception check real quick. Just to like because now like if they're bored, now that brings those players back to be invested of like, okay, well, like why am I doing this? Or what
Right.
am I doing this for? I would say in combat, I use a lot of techniques like that to try to pull everyone in or encouraging working together. Like if a player wants to combo something with another player, encouraging that kind of team cohesive effort as opposed to it's like, okay, it's you and then you and then you and then you and then the monsters and then rinse and repeat. It's like, okay, finding ways to be creative and allowing the like that dynamic element of combative situations to kind of unfold as like a theatric moment as opposed to a turn-based, scenario or situation. So for combats, I would say that way. I would say for like role play moments within games, one of the things that I try to put a good bit of effort into is playing away, and I've got it drawn out here. I can't show because I don't know if any of my players are actually in here right now. So when I had everyone create their character backstories, right? I took all of the names and put them in like a wheel and then like did like a degrees of separation thing. And so found ways to like tie all the storylines into each other. And it wasn't like a direct tie-in, but it was like, oh, hey, this is similar to this, or
Mm-hmm.
this is a person that you would have heard of. So then what that has turned into, and it was a theory, it was testing it, but what that's turned into is now that I'm having a lore moment with the bard character who has certain elemental like elements and ties to the rogue character that they may or may not know about. If I'm explaining something about a backstory or something about the bard's, her his nature of whatever, and now I mention a name or something that is subsequently in the rogue's backstory, it now piques that other player's interest to be like, wait, hold on a second. And then so it's like finding a way to tie the group together without making it feel forced, obviously, is something that I'm testing the waters on. Seems to be going pretty decently so far.
It's a
No, that's not.
weird it's a weird experience to watch when you even don't pick backstories that like you're like everybody write your backstory without other people. And then it's interesting how easy it is to start finding threads to connect.
Yep.
Um, so
No, that's that exercise for yourself is kind of, I'm sure, really gets your gears rolling as far as like making the story, moving things forward, and like, oh well, I'm in a slump. Well, let's see what we got here. Um, okay.
Okay. Well, no, it's like I've got the main premise of the story line that I wrote out, and then I've got like little side adventures basically planned of like, okay, if character one and character two decide to lean into their connection, then I can basically pull these adventure notes into and input them realistically at any point in the story that happens. And
Hmm.
so it's like the prep work that I put into the storyline and into the characters are all, and I use that like that wheel of connection basically to be like, okay, this character is attached to this character. Let's write a few paragraphs, synopsis, adventures of like what this would entail if if the players discover that the characters have this connection, and if they chose to like investigate on it, kind of thing. And I think that's an element that really um, allows the players and encourages the players to really invest in the game itself. And I've found that like when I encourage and find ways to have the characters invest in the game themselves, I don't necessarily have to worry about like them getting bored or them getting like discouraged about something. And because now it ties in the work that they've done, and now they're seeing the fruition of those efforts being put into the game and then kind of ran with in certain storylines. And so I think that seems to be working for me so far.
no, that sounds great, and it probably is, in all honesty, probably the best way to do it. Um, I definitely think that a lot of times you see those things, and then as you're walking through the path and you're starting to put those puzzle pieces together, you start seeing even more similarities rather than less, which is really crazy in my opinion because 90% of the time you don't write with everybody at the table at once.
Yeah.
Um, a one of my biggest experiences with that is my Dress to Quest campaign right now, where we had a bunch of characters who came in with a very divine mentality,
Mm.
with the four gods, and then all of a sudden somebody was like, "Well, I'm looking at the four constellations," and I'm like, and they started naming these animals, and I was like, "I wonder if I can parallel this." And I
How?
started,
Hmm.
so it was like, so the people of Icewind Dale, because they know it as the spirits, not as the actual divine, um, they would represent them as animals. But then our cleric was like, well, that sounds a lot like this character or like this god that I pray to, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, and then all of a sudden you start putting those parallels together, and we figured out that those four gods that are circling our party right now are the same spirits that are floating around in Icewind Dale, which was a really neat way to
That's super dope. It's
change it.
almost like if you saw a constellation from like the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere,
Yep.
and it was like the northern hemisphere sees this as like, oh, this is a, you know, a stallion, but just through like planetary shift, someone in the southern hemisphere, it's like, no, that's clearly a goat, and it's like it's the same series of 6 stars. So like,
Yeah, it's the same series of six stars. So yeah, it was really
that's
neat
super cool. I really
to
like that though, dude.
um, and taking the ancestries of things and manipulating those too has been a lot of fun as well because you get to tie instead of always tying the players to each other, you're tying those players to
Yeah,
the world a little
the
easier
world.
than you
Yeah,
would just by having a friend that might know them or somebody that's connected to them. It's actually
yeah,
deeper than that. Uh,
I
so
like that.
so now you have a horse with goat horns for an animal to represent a god. Yeah, why not?
Welcome to D&D, guys.
Welcome to
This is how it goes.
D&D.
Stranger things have and will happen. So like,
Absolutely.
Guaranteed.
Wait until you start
For sure.
praying to a Tarask. Like, then we got bigger issues.
I
Uh,
had one of my buddies. He had an AL character and like an eventually character, and his character was just like notorious for always joining like whatever cult the
oh
party came
no.
across. And so like in game, like his character had like a sleeve tattoo of like I'm in this cult, and then it's like crossed out, and the next one, and then crossed out, the next one crossed out. It's like, he's
It's
like,
like
no one can ever doubt that I'm not a part of this world. I'm like, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
uh, that's hilarious. It's like, yep, nope, Call to the Dragon. Nope, we'll put the black band over that one. The
Right?
Harpers, nope, black band over
Nope.
that one.
Zentarum, nope.
Zentarum,
Like
nope.
it just going down.
And it looks like a very strange, like Hawaiian bands, but they just have the
Right?
markings underneath them for each one of the.
Like that Polynesian tribal, like, but
Yeah,
just like crossed out factions.
that's funny. Uh,
So
uh,
I got another question for you though,
Yeah,
Chris.
man.
So it's kind of a two-parter.
Let's do it.
What has been, as a DM or as a player, what's been your biggest high and what's been your lowest low?
Ooh,
he loves this
hmm.
question. He
I
That's a
do.
loves
good
It's a
one.
good question.
That's
It's
a
a
good
great
question.
question.
As somebody
Um,
from who hasn't played very often, it's a great question because it allows you to then get those understandings.
yeah, I want to like, I want to say the biggest high yet, right? Thus far, um, was revealing this room to my players.
Mm.
And I get the same feeling whenever I spend a lot of time like on a terrain build or on a map or something like that, and the players are like, okay, like, well, what do I see? And I'm going through the narration and the description of something, and then being able to like put something on the table, and then they're just like, oh, okay, all right, well, all right, nope, I can't do that thing that I was thinking because there's a roof over my head and I didn't realize that. I think those moments of like immersion and being able to take like this story that we're telling as DMs and being able to put it into a visual representation, or being able to create an environment like this and really transport the players to somewhere that you're, you know, engaging the storytelling aspect of. I would say the reactions that they kind of exude are some of my highest highs within this thing. Seeing, and it's one of those things. It's like, you know, it gives you as a person, as a human being, a good little pat on the back. Like you put a lot of effort into this or into something, and then like to see your friends' reactions and it be like, this is so cool. It makes you feel good. And so like that's probably been the highest high. Um, the lowest low is like having players at the table that like are trying to find ways to cheat the system or to like, you know, work around things, and like everyone plays, you know, this fantasy game for their own reasons, right? And so I try not to curtail that aspect of like, okay, you know, this person's here for a reason, but they're obviously exploiting certain elements of things, and they are then detracting things from the rest of the people at the table. So finding ways to creatively kind of put a stop into those situations that are, you know, concurrently happening without it being like, hey, like don't do that kind of thing. Finding ways to be like to nullify in a way that makes the characters still feel like they are accomplishing something, but also are able to send like a clear message to the players, like, all right, come on, like what are you doing? So I would say situations like that where like you're forced into a position where you have to alter or do something because now that player is causing difficulty for everyone else at the table and making it not a fun experience for everyone else involved. Situations like that are obviously more difficult because there's, an innate conflict in the nature of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're able to either one, and if you're not the type of person that wants to creatively come across and figure out a way to kind of usurp their plans essentially, but like having to have a conversation like that with a player is always like it's difficult. But and like hopefully you're friends enough with the individual, with the person, that they're like, all right, my bad, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to mess up an experience for everyone else. But I think that like putting DMs when DMs get put into positions like that and they kind of like have to put their foot down, those aren't always the most enjoyable, but I mean they're needed sometimes. And so it's
Right.
like one of the like situations like that are probably the lower of the lows, just because I don't like to do it. But it's like
Mm-hmm.
if you are causing like the fun level at the table to go down, it's like, come on, like you got to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, those are interesting scenarios. Fortunately, I haven't been on the receiving end of that yet.
There was one, and I had this conversation with this person, so I'm not ashamed to say it, but they kept using a certain tactic in combat, and it was like consistently over and over and over again. This was what the person always did. This is was their always their go to, and they would like kind of like bolster themselves on the fact of like, oh, I can do this without a shadow of a doubt, and it was to transmute a fireball to lightning, channel divinity, max damage, right? Okay, that's a solid tactic for a sorcerer cleric. And that was the go-to, right?
Right.
So they had one encounter that was particularly deadly, just due to the nature of the campaign at the time. Well, I decided to give the monster a lightning heal ability. So said character, and it was thematically made sense with the story. Said character did this tactic, and I was like, cool, they heal for 92 damage. And they were just like, what? Like, yeah, lightning heals them. Never again did that character ever do that tactic. And like, so it was like one of those things, and it was just like, I don't know, I would say situations like that are definitely a little bit more dicey, but they're, you also try to keep in mind that everyone kind of plays this game for a reason, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so trying to pull yourself back out of your own pride, your own ego, and really analyze the situation as like Chris to whoever the person is. It's like, okay, like why is this situation happening? Not at the, is there a reason? Is this person going through something? Are they dealing with something? Is there a better way to reach out to this individual that is causing this low moment, as you're saying, and figuring out the solution to that, and whatever that looks like is a route that I more often take than not, just
Hmm.
due to the fact of like I really do want everyone that's here to get what they want out of D&D at the table, to be able to enjoy their time and being able to be like, hey, like, okay, why are you doing this specific thing? Is there a reason? Is there something like that we can do differently? Are you not enjoying, is this element of the game boring you? And we can adjust within parameters to make sure that those moments aren't kind of brought to the forefront of everything, and that everyone has fun at the table.
No, that's awesome that you're able to do that. Um, James, I noticed that you pinned a question. You want me to go ahead and tackle that one
Yeah, if you
from
want to.
Shadow?
Kind of same on the same boat. So
It is on the same boat. So we've got a question from Shadow. As a DM, have you ever made a ruling in a game that you later regretted, and were there any consequences tied to it?
Um, ruling. Yeah, there's been a couple of situations where like I ruled incorrectly, absolutely. And it was one of those things that like I came back afterwards and was like, hey, I did this incorrectly last time. My bad. Going forward, I was managing a, whatever my excuse was. I feel like as a human being, I am very much okay with owning my mistakes and moving forward and not letting them hang anything else up.
No. Okay. I'm gonna pivot a little bit then.
Go for it.
I know these past couple of questions have been DM related, but
Yeah.
we mentioned Mysticon. Um, what was the driver behind making creating Mysticon?
So Morgan Dangerfield and myself, good buddy of mine, Morgan runs the Heroes of Evermore page. We met through Instagram and just like met and clicked. And so we created the Mystical Cauldron as really like a combined effort, like merch store for accessories and hats and t-shirts and sweaters and coffee mugs and all these fun things. And then the Mystical Cauldron is Morgan Mystical Cauldron Chris, which is where the name came from. And then so we got a crazy idea one day, and we are looking at like what conventions were, TTRPG related in the greater San Diego area. And there was a resounding, very minimal response back. And so we were like, let's do it ourselves. And I'm very much like that type of person where I'm like, well, I don't have this, but I could do it. Like I could build it. I could figure that out. But what I don't know, I can figure out along the way. And so we just kind of dove into it. And we're like, it's a really good timing of it. Like last year being the 50th anniversary of D&D. And so it was kind of like a momentous like tie into the D&D community. And was we were just like Morgan and I were both like, let's see what happens. Let's do it, put it together, see if there's an interest in the community, see if there's an interest in people that want to come do these kind of things. We reached out to James, we reached out to buddies like Drew, Mike from the Weather Dragon, a bunch of people from across the nation, and a bunch of people locally. Celebrities came. We had NFL players that were there. Just a fun group of people that really kind of showed as soon as we reached out and were like, "Hey, we're doing this thing. It's the first year for it. We would love to, for you guys to be a part of it." And then found a pretty, and I mean, James, you can answer, but like from what I'm told, a good group of like, hey, this was actually a lot of fun kind of thing.
Yeah. No, like I said, and we broke down Mysticon right after we got. I
Yeah.
mean, Drew and I did, and there were some. Every first convention's gonna have its rough points, right?
Oh yeah.
But for somebody who's never ran a convention before and dove into it head first, it went pretty smooth in my opinion.
Pretty decently.
Yeah, pretty smooth. Really, a lot of the downfalls came from the location. I mean, that really was the main issue that we ran into at this. And but the people that showed up were great. The events that were being done were great. Like I said, the very minimal things were actually not well done. Everything else, and I can remember, and the thing that killed me about it, and Morgan's gonna give me crap for it, but I don't really care because this was the joke that we all had the entire weekend, what or the entire day was Morgan's hair was perfect and Chris's hair was like a wreck. Chris was dripping sweat and like running around 100 miles an hour, and really, I think that just shows how much passion you had for this project because you didn't stop. Like I spoke to you before the convention. I
Mm.
spoke to you after the convention. During the convention, we didn't see Chris because Chris was in 12 different locations at the same time.
I will say I will defend Morgan because I love the guy. I know he was running a lot of things on the outside portion of it.
Hmm.
So like some of the vendor issues that we were running into with a few different people. I know he was managing a lot of that stuff out back, the stuff with the bands outside and out back,
Hmm.
the food trucks and like everything that was kind of external to the main convention hall. I know he was putting out a lot of those fires, and honestly, like we both had walkies, and I don't think either one of us reached out like to one another because we were both like just
Busy, busy.
running.
Yeah.
But
And maybe
definitely
it's
it was
just
one of those
the,
things I was not expecting. Like I know, and I've ran events before,
yeah.
right? And like I know day of event planning, there's a lot to it, but that was a lot. I
Yeah.
100% agree.
And like,
We had
and
we
the
had a
crazy
coffee
thing
cart guy
is,
there, Josh. He owns Archer's Arrows Coffee, and it was like so at the convention there was like a hallway that went around the back, and there was like a beer stand and then a coffee cart, and like so to get from the main convention hall out to the back convention hall, you had to like go up this hallway, right? And I kid you not, every time I passed from like the back to the front, like speed walking, like an Olympic old lady, like speed walking up and down that alley trying to put out another fire. I either had Josh handing me a coffee or the bartender handing me a beer. And so I'm just like,
which one do I need right now? What do I need right now?
what do I need? What do I need? Both. But like so, but to get back to your original question, we really wanted to create something that would showcase like all of our friends, all of our like people that we know in this community, in this space, and like we wanted to give them a place to shine, to showcase like, hey, this is a jewelry maker who makes these really cool jewelry effects out of dice, or this is a another crafter who does soap, but she does it scented for these different things, or this guy, he does like his own personal tailor tooled leather, or these are some of the local game shops in the area, and a ton of other things. And so it's like having that network of individuals and knowing it and being the type of person that I am, extending this is kind of going back to before, wanting to extend that same element of my personality into everyone that I've crossed paths with, and wanting to be like, hey, like I have this idea that I think would be a really cool thing, and I want to put effort into it because I think it would cultivate a great space for everyone to grow, for everyone to get something out of it, for everyone to meet each other and to grow together and build and expand the community even more than it already is. And being able to have and host a place like that, and to be able to be like, oh, hey, like yeah, I met you at Morgan and Chris's thing, or like, yeah, I met you guys at Mysticon last year, like, and being able to be like the kind of an epicenter of that for the greater San Diego area, is a
Which was a
really
great
cool concept.
turnout, mind you. For
Say
a
what?
1 day convention, it was a great turnout.
Right? For
Yeah.
yeah, I and then so it's like I know we're in the talks already. We're in the not talks in the planning process of next year, this year, it being a 2 day convention in a much larger space. So but then with like all the constructive feedback that we got from the majority of all the individuals, of like things of having it be a 2 day, having the panel separate, having a dedicated space for the panel so they can be heard, having open gaming tables, having more, a RAN tables kind of thing. And so all these elements are something that as we're going through and locking down the venue, we are trying to nail down the right place that incorporates all these different elements of everything while still keeping that same like family feel that I feel like we did a pretty decent job of
Oh
trying to
yeah.
maintain and cultivate for the last year.
Well, and did you guys ever figure out how what your amount was for last
For
year?
attendees,
Yeah.
I think it was 287
Okay.
with every with like all the vendors and stuff. With like if we look at like vendor, staff, security, attendees, I think it was closer to the 400 mark.
Okay.
But like ticket sales bought prior to or day of, it was in the like it was right around 300.
Okay. Which is not a bad for a first
No,
convention
No,
for
for a 1 day.
yeah,
yeah.
Um, I think, like you said, you've definitely hit the markers on what was considered the downfalls for Mysticon, right there.
yeah,
The main one was the sound issue because we were having such an issue hearing because the vendor hall and the panels were in the same exact room,
same room,
and you just
yeah,
can't. Um, Now, mind you, we saw a very similar experience at Page in
really,
Philadelphia. Not with the panels were just blocked off, so they would
yeah,
put false walls, um, and they were spaced out a little bit farther away from everything else going on. But it was still all in the same building. It was all in the same room. Um, but yeah, they put the false walls up and kind of soundproofed it as best as they could.
Best they could.
But and the game tables were spaced out better. It's like more.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and I think one of the like what
that
was
was
I
an
gonna say?
interesting venue to use too. Like it wasn't. It's not a
Really?
traditional convention venue. It
Hmm.
was it, and that was part of it.
Our,
But
ours or our page?
yours, the one
Oh
yours
yeah,
you
ours was a
used,
wedding
yeah,
venue.
that's what I'm saying.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, and we knew, like, I knew it walking in. I was like, this
this
is not going
is
to be a convention venue, but it was big enough for the size that it was at. I think actually
yes,
part of the problem came into though, is you had more attendees
yeah.
than the venue could hold,
Oh
with
yeah, we
in
were
that
not
perspective.
expecting what we had
Yeah,
whatsoever.
which is a
Um,
great thing to have
yeah,
happen.
right. Which is one of the reasons that like it kind of goes back to one of the first things we talked on this thing is like me personally as a person, I will never shy away from competition or criticism because competition and criticism is what will always force me to be better than I was yesterday,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, criticize me because all that's going to cause me to do
Yeah.
is to one prove you wrong and prove you better and then be able to be like, all right, like hold my beer, watch
Yeah,
this.
hold my beer. Let's do this. That's the
Yeah,
military. That's
and
the military mentality in both of us.
oh, without a
So
doubt.
like, yeah. Wait, you're gonna do that? Hold my beer. I got you.
I'll do it
Uh,
on one leg.
yeah, right. One arm tied behind my back. I'll make sure this whole convention runs. No. Uh, but yeah, no. I think those are really good pointers for that. Though, is it's like it was such a well done convention. There were very few things that were actually downfalls,
Mhm.
and they could be easily fixed. I think that's the
Yeah,
greatest part about it is it's not something that you're like, oh no, this is like detrimental and I can't
yeah,
fix this. This is like, no, no, no. This was overlooked and we can
yep.
fix this next year with no issue.
This was an oversight that we didn't plan for. Had we known, we probably could have planned for in a way that like would have been entirely avoided. Like had we
Yeah,
known, like, oh, hey, 500 people are going to come through the day,
yeah.
we would have been like, all right, maybe we need a venue that's a little bit
It's
bigger
gonna
or
fit
a new
500
food
people,
truck.
not 40.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Not that bad. Like I'm not gonna bash it that bad. It's like
No, 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 no. Well, it was
150
funny.
people probably would have been a nice snug area in there. But
Yeah.
yeah, 400 at some of the peak hours, you could definitely. It's not Gen Con though. Like for those that have been to Gen Con, like yes, it's the biggest venue in the United States when it comes to TTRPGs.
Yeah.
But the vendor hall on any normal hour of the day has 40,000 people in it.
Yeah.
Like you no.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how big your
Insane.
vendor hall is. It's,
Yeah.
it's too
That
many
that no
people.
matter what, it's going to be packed. Like, yeah, you could host it on an airport runway, and you're still gonna be shoulder to shoulder with somebody.
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Another one from Shadow.
That's it.
Uh, if there was any location on Earth that you could hold an in-person session, where would it be?
Any location on Earth hold an in-person session. Ooh, okay.
I have two, but I'll let you go first.
In person. See, my mind starts going in like a billion different directions with that. It would like, I would want it to be thematic to the story that I was telling, right? If
Right.
I'm telling like a story in Icewind Dale, right? I would want it to be like in an igloo with an open roof and the northern lights above, right?
Yeah.
If I'm doing like a death house, like a creepy,
Yeah.
dimly lit mansion. But as far as like generally, I think it would be really cool to like host a game in like Gary Gygax's original sandbox.
Oh, it's pretty. I'll give you that. I've seen it.
It's so right.
I've seen it. I've never.
Like
I haven't.
just
I
like
haven't played a
the
game in it yet. I didn't get an opportunity this year. It was already booked out, even with the ticket I had. Um, but yeah, they run two games a year in his old house in his basement every year for
yeah,
Gary Con. Um, and one of them, I
like
think
that
he
would be
had.
so cool.
Yeah, it's a humbling experience, though. I'll give you that because Gary's house is probably 12, maybe 1,200 square feet. Like it's a
Yeah.
tiny sucker.
Yeah.
Um, but to and if you ever get to go to Lake Geneva, the entire town has just fallen in love with the mentality. So
Yeah.
like you have dragons in front of the library, you have you've got the tribute bench, you've got the tribute wall, all these
Yeah.
things, um, and it's one of those just really strange feelings of like this is where it all began because
Yeah.
you can see it in
Like you can
everything.
feel the nostalgia
Hmm.
there.
Right. Uh, two places, and this kind of breaks it down to like you said. It was two locations depending on what I'm running. If I
Uh-huh.
was running anything horror whatsoever, it'd be absolutely fantastic if I had a now mind you, I'm gonna say this and it's gonna sound a little weird because I would want an air conditioned version of this
I'm
because I
here for
don't
it.
want to
Let's
do
do
it
it.
in its entirety is like a Transylvanian castle would be absolutely incredible to run
Ooh,
anything horror. Be great.
anything.
Anything horror. Like you could do Call of Cthulhu, you could do Candela Obscura, you
Yeah.
could do D&D, anything. Um, and then I immediately go to my passion. Being able to run anything in the Prancing Pony down in New Zealand, I
Yeah.
would be in heaven.
That'd be
Heaven,
cool.
like like getting ready to
Well,
to
it's
spring
like,
off the new One Ring show that we're dropping in just a couple weeks now. Um,
yeah.
to be able to run that there would just be a dream come true. Like
So
be
cool. It's like
crazy.
you see those like themed Airbnbs, right? And you they're all over the country. Like I
We've
can't tell
already
how many
have
times I've been like, I could run a good old adventure in something that looks like the Shire. Like that'd
Yeah,
be
so we've
cool.
already had our cast that's doing for Moria have already had that conversation of like if this goes well, next year it will be in person in one of these Airbnbs.
That'd
Like
be so dope.
because it's such a nostalgia portion of that world, right?
Yeah.
Like when you think of the Shire and of Bag End, you can see those different features that you wouldn't see in anywhere else.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and then I think the last one, like you said, uh, it's not anywhere on. Uh, it kind of comes down to it's like there's certain places though. Like even if I was running these adventures, I would not want to play in them. Just wouldn't. There's a thing called I think it's Tour D&D. I think it's a highly immersive travel agency.
Okay.
Now they're playing Tomb of Annihilation in the
Okay.
middle of like Peru in the summer. Like no,
Perfect.
don't want to do that.
No.
160 degrees. No, I'm
Yeah.
good.
Perfect.
When your natural environment is
It's
what
about
is already just emanating the what
the
you were supposed to be describing, and the player's like, "Wait, what did you say?" And you're like, "No, no, this place is
yeah.
100%
This is
haunted
yeah
by the ghost of X number of
yeah
Mayans."
yeah.
Like,
Or like you said, like Icewind Dale, but we're playing out in like a an old cabin that's like
yeah,
all the cracks are still in the walls and the wind
yeah.
is getting through. Like no, I'm good. I don't want to be in 6 layers of clothing to run a game. Apparently, we're always rolling dice because my hand won't stop shaking.
Everyone's shaking.
So
But
yeah,
I think it would I would want it to like I said, I would want it to match whatever the theme was kind of thing.
right.
That would be a cool like additional element of immersion that I feel
Hmm.
would be like easy to kind of play into a little bit. Like if you're playing what is the salt marsh, right? And you're playing
Yeah,
like on a wooden ship kind of thing. Like that'd be
yeah,
cool.
that'd be cool. Like on a wood ship or on a dock somewhere, and you could hear the
Yeah,
water behind it. That kind of thing. That'd be really cool.
that'd be
Um,
cool.
what about you, Beaker?
Yeah.
I know you
Man.
haven't ran anything really in the last other than one game of Power Rangers with
Yeah, yeah,
us.
yeah. No,
Um,
so given the opportunity, you and I have talked, James. I love the Egyptian theme.
yeah,
Oh,
So I would love to run a game out in Cairo around Giza pyramids or
oh,
Tomb of the Pharaohs,
yeah,
because you could run multiple different styles there. Tomb of the
yeah,
Pharaohs, you could just have like a whole haunted desert feel,
yeah.
right?
that'd be cool.
Would be
Um,
cool. I didn't even
Because I
think
mean,
about
you've
it for
got
that, but yeah, as long
you
as
got
you
the
have
etchings
the.
in the on the mountain wall behind you,
Mhm.
of all the carvings. So it's just it fits.
It
Yes.
does. It
Um,
fits.
then you could also, I think you could run just like you could run a Call of Cthulhu on Queen Mary.
Oh,
I mean, because the Queen
that's
Mary's already haunted, right?
yeah.
Yep, yep.
There you go. It's
That's one
already you've already got that time frame
I'll tune
there.
into.
Do
You'll
what?
tune in too.
I'll tune into that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like you can put the video cameras
Oh,
and
that would
I'll
be
stay on this side of the water.
yeah,
Like
right.
that would be an experience right there. You play a Call of Cthulhu, so
Oh,
psychological, so horror based,
Yeah,
and you're playing it on a
yeah.
alleged haunted ship.
or like the
Perfect.
Winchester,
I
or
don't know.
like
I think
crazy
H.P.
enough, like put it
The
in
Lovecraft did
Winchester
himself
House
the
would be
in that.
another
Winchester
one.
Like,
house will be another crazy one.
I've toured that house. It's
ooh,
Oh, have you?
interesting. Yes, I have. I toured
Oh my.
it like it was in like Halloween time frame.
Oh wow.
Um,
Do you
very
know about the
gimmicky.
Winchester house, Chris?
no, which one's that?
That oh,
Yeah, you
that's a
gotta
whole
look
other.
at. You can look it up later, but what it
Okay.
is the wife of the guy who created
Winchester.
the Winchester
Yeah.
was told by I think it was oracle or something that
Hmm.
all of the people that would ever be used that the gun was ever used against would come and haunt her.
Oh
No.
no,
Okay,
it was.
quick and dirty,
Um,
like three
she had
four
to continue.
sentences.
She had to keep building this house, otherwise she would die.
Yeah,
Like
Oh, I do know what you're talking about.
so,
She like
there's
got
and
all
it's
the
like a
sorts of
house
like.
huge
does all
mansion.
sorts of weird things.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
there's stairways that are like
Go to
each step
nowhere.
is like this thick. There's hidden walls. It's all sorts
I
of shit.
okay.
yeah.
I do know what you're talking like doors that open to nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, yes,
There's
I
a
know what you're
door
talking
that
about.
opens
there's
out.
literally a door on the second floor that opens up, and there's nothing. There's no
Yeah.
floor. It goes a straight drop to the kitchen down below.
Because she was like trying to confuse, she was told she had like confused the ghost of, so they couldn't
Yeah,
find her or something like that, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's
I was thinking for some reason what came to mind was oh, I can't remember the couple's name. The when you said Winchester, that didn't ring a bell. What came to mind was
supernatural.
the couple in The Conjuring. They're
Oh,
the real
yeah.
their house for a second was what came to mind because it like actually housed all those artifacts and whatever.
right. Yeah. So next question,
Yeah.
and we've got how this is from A Welch 147. It says how long has your current campaign ran, and what's the longest that you've run?
So my current campaign, we were actually just talking about this the other day. Started like July 28th. This is my second campaign. So July, what, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. So we're at 7, 8 months right now.
Yeah.
The last campaign that I ran was lasted a year and a half, and I ran Strixhaven Curriculum of Chaos as my first campaign, and then my the previous one that I just did. But I didn't place it in Forgotten Realms. I started with the storyline of Strixhaven and then transported it into my own world of Arcavios.
Okay.
And then this story now that I'm telling that's been going on for 8 months is my first like full bore like homebrew campaign, all taking place in my homebrew world of Arcavios.
Nice. Um, so with that, I was trying to. I had the question, and now it just literally just dipped out of my head. Uh, go back to that later. But yeah, I'm sure I'll remember it. What I guess I was going to ask is like, what was the transition? Like, how did you transition from Strixhaven, and what was the? Oh, actually, that was the question I wanted to ask. Was what was your time frame? So like, were you playing once a week, once every 2 weeks,
Okay.
once a month?
So with Strixhaven, we were playing every week.
Okay.
We were playing once a week, every week. Um, and I took the Strixhaven story, and because like if those of you guys that have read Strixhaven or ran Strixhaven, it is very like regionally, like you can tell the entire adventure book in like in or around a college campus, and then
Right.
basically you could take that college campus and put it wherever you
Planted
want. So I
anywhere. Yep.
Yeah, so I added elements based off of character backstories, and then like adventures over the summers between years that kind of took place in different elements in different places in the world, and really started liking the element of world building. Um, and we were playing that one every week. And then so when that campaign ended, I had this idea for the Dragonfire and Demon Plague that we're in right now. Of like, okay, I want to take this, I want to take the story because the continent that I had campaign one on was on the eastern portion of the world. This campaign is taking place in the northern continent of the world, and like kind of have this theorizing idea that I would like to host a campaign on each of the continents of the
Mm-hmm.
world to kind of further build out the lore and the world of the world of Arcavios. But this campaign currently we're playing, I would say consistently every other week. We just had a Saturday follow up Wednesday game the last week because we took a couple weeks off while I was in the process of moving and building all of this.
So on a so as of right now, the way your structure is, it's usually about every other week.
Yeah, every other week right
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
And I can't imagine it being that easy, being the fact that you don't have a ton of like you have to build everything. So like that's part of the process, right? Like
Yeah. And
doing
so
it weekly was definitely a
yeah.
lot harder.
Yeah, it's not like I can be like, oh, I have, I can open to page 57 of the adventure book and just kind of run and, DM improvise a 4 or 5 hour session. It's like, okay, this is going to be taking place. So I want to make sure I put the time into, like I said before, I'm building something right now that'll showcase in the next session. But, creating these, terrain pieces, building out the story, making sure that the thing and being reactive really to the
Mm,
players that are in the game. Like the players do something and I don't want them to feel railroaded into something else, but I also have a story that I want to tell, right? And so it's like being able to adapt my story, keeping the core elements of the story that I have, and then allowing the players to drive a vast majority of this campaign, but reactive to elements that are ongoing in the world
mm,
is it's a very different experience than running your a straight adventure book, but it's something that I really enjoy because I don't feel as like tied to, oh, this happens and then this happens and then this happens. It's like
mm-hmm.
I've got a loose idea of a direction and know kind of how like I have major world things planned out, but it's adaptable to how the players do it. And so that's a fun element that's definitely different and that I'm learning as I'm going with it, kind of thing.
I got you. Yeah, and you'll that comes with a lot of homebrew.
Yeah,
Um, and it's funny because I kind of did the exact opposite. Like I ran nothing but homebrew for 3.5 years when I
yeah,
first got back into Dungeons and Dragons, and then I moved to this mix between homebrew and module because I was running so much and I was running so constantly. I was like, I don't have time to prep literally everything every week.
yeah.
Um, but what I found fun about the mixture is like I can take an element of a book and go, oh, well that's cool, but this is not what I need it to do exactly, and I can start to twist it a little bit,
You can
and
tweak
I can
it.
move it. Or like last week, the session we just ran on Monday, um, I took three different scenarios in chapter two for Icewind Dale and I slammed them all together. And I went, okay, this is what I actually want to happen.
Yep.
So like we took stuff from the Giants and we took stuff from the Goliaths and we took stuff from the Dragon, and we're all of them are piecing together right now, trying to figure out what's connecting. And I've connected some of those dots that weren't normally the same way that they would be connected
Nice.
in the book.
And it's
Uh,
always crazy with DMs like do like you know do one way or then do the other, right? So it's like if you start homebrew and then move to modules, or if you start modules, do to move to homebrew. So it's like I started the opposite. Like when I started running Strixhaven, I was also at the same time running Adventure League modules, right?
mm-hmm.
And so like my own home campaign, I had the freedom of time, right? I didn't have I wasn't watching the clock where I had to get
Right.
through 4 hour module, this 60-page document in 4 hours. And so one of the cool things that I think it really helped me set me up as a DM for the future was running like consistently those adventure modules, because it taught me so much time management. Because a lot of those modules, you'll have 5 to 7 players at your table, and then it'll have 3 encounters you have to get through that
Yeah.
module, and then also role play elements. And like, so being able to learn how to keep the story going without making the players feel rushed, to run encounters at a pace that allows the players to feel engaged, but not like you're just brushing over it. And so it's like, now I'll run in an Adventure League module and I'll have 3 combats in it and still allow for ample time. And it's like, when we were talking, when we you asked that question earlier, was like, hey, like, how do what do you do this? How do you do these elements of keeping players engaged? It's really the exposure. Like, in my opinion, I think running a good number of those preset modules is such an invaluable tool set, because it teaches you, time management. It teaches you how to drive a story. It teaches you how to run combat effectively and efficiently. It teaches you how to keep the players engaged, all on this time budget. And if you can do it within that time frame, you can do it without a time frame easily, and propel your story that much better.
Yeah. No, and I think that was the thing I started learning when I started doing con games. Same
Yes.
reason, right? Like you've got, and the unique thing you get with con games, not only do you have the time restraint, but you also have the people restraint because you don't know who's sitting at your table half the
Nope.
time. Um, and eventually, it kind of starts that way, but
Yeah.
sooner or later, you start getting the same amount of
The same
people,
people.
um, unless it's just a very strange area that like you don't see people the same
Yeah.
frequency. But con games, you're not going to get the same person
Nope.
unless you've really made a influence in somebody and they're plucking out you to try to get
Yeah.
stuff.
Unless you, or like you go with the, you know what I mean? Like, oh, like you're bringing a group of friends to come sit down at a table at a con to play with your
Yeah,
buddy, kind of thing. It really is a crapshoot.
yeah,
Like,
and a lot of times that's what you'll get is you'll get a bunch of friends that are like, oh hey, we want to all play together, but we have no idea what GM we're getting. Like, and they just drop at your table. And
yeah.
that can be anything from parents and kids to, a bunch of buddies from college together getting together.
Yep.
And I've ran literally the same exact module at a convention for all 3 types of people, just drop-ins
Yeah.
to whole groups of friends to this families. They're dramatically different because all the
Oh,
players
without
are
a
bringing
doubt.
something completely different, even
Well,
if the
and
module
like you
goes
said
exactly the
before,
way
like,
it would.
yeah, no, without a doubt. And like you had said before, like, one of the cool things is like being able to pick out those elements that you're like, oh, you find this interesting. That is like, in my opinion, like kind of sitting back behind the screen, watching it all and happen to unfold. One of the cool things is like, you have a players come to a puzzle or an encounter or a role play moment, and being able to watch like like rookie players or veteran players, and like being able to see how they handle this same situation differently is another one of those tool sets. Like you had said, like, oh, this is cool. Like, I'm not going to use this way, but I can tweak this a little bit
Mm,
and now learn from this
yeah,
situation, kind of thing. And that's definitely something I love doing. Like, I love playing with like seasoned players, or new players, to like see how their eyes interpret the situation,
yeah.
because I feel like it just challenges me to be that much better.
So I'll give you some hints that I figured out this weekend that I didn't even think about.
Let's
Um,
hear it.
because so we one of our games this weekend was with a guy who has not ran a game in 37 years. He was coming back
It was Mike from
because
Weather Dragon. He's old.
who? Oh, Mike.
It was
Yeah,
Mike
Mike's old.
from
Uh, no, so David Baxter has been running games. He's played at Gary's table before. He's
Wow.
actually been a player there, and because Ernie, Luke's brother, passed away this last month,
Yeah.
he was like, I'm coming back to run games. Now, when he said he's running games, I didn't realize what he was saying when I sat down at the table. So we're not playing 5e.
Oh
We were
no.
playing original first
Oh.
edition with everything that it requires.
Oh.
Um, and thankfully we had a bunch of players who had played first edition for a
Where
while
that's
and
what
they
they
understood
do.
what we were doing. But when we finished the module, he said that's the first time I've ever seen, and he's like, and I've ran this module hundreds of times. I've ever seen the module be defeated by negotiation and not by combat. And
Welcome to 2025.
I was like, welcome to 2025. We do things differently. But he told me, he's like, I want this exact table next year at GaryCon. I don't want other players. I want you guys to pick module two. And what he was running was the first module ever written by Gary G1
Shut up.
in its
Dude.
original like two pieces of paper, like worn out
That,
module
that
um,
is so
of the
cool.
Hill
I'm so happy
Giants.
you got that opportunity, dude.
But it got me thinking, picking up some of those old modules and starting to play around with those is a lot of fun to think through as well because there's a lot of lore built behind them.
Oh, tons. Well, I think
Yeah.
there's, oh, what was it?
I
There
mean,
was something
Beakers
I,
had the opportunity too because we got to do it
Yeah.
with Zeb as well.
oh,
So
Yeah.
nice.
yeah, we played Return to the Isle of Dread with a 70-year
Oh,
old man who's running with 16 players, and he's doing it like it's just another day at the
second
office.
nature.
Like you go, you go, you go. Okay, you guys are in this area, so you three are going. Okay, you guys are done. Okay, you guys are over here in this area. You guys do this, and he just boom, 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 boom,
Blue.
and I realized it's because this man knows every inch of this island, like it is just where he lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, um,
Literally in his mind, he lives there.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. But it was such a cool
he's not
experience.
taking you somewhere. He's closing his eyes and walking out his back porch. Like,
Yeah, and that's how it felt though. Like he knew every inch of it. He knew
that's
every
cool.
where we were going, what we were stepping into, and then he looks at us at the end of it. We'd been playing for what 4 hours at that time,
Yep.
and he was like, "You guys only got through half of it." I
Yep.
was like, "What?" Like,
We were dicking around so much.
we
Really
did
good.
around so much. Yeah, we only got through half of it.
Well,
So
and
yeah,
that's the best. Like, that's also like the sign of like a really good DM, though,
yeah,
right? And it's like obviously the DM sits down at the table before the players get there with an intention of like what they kind of like having, there's expectations and everything. Like they're expecting to get through this module, but being able to be like, hey, the players are having so much fun in this situation and this scenario and weighing the option of like, okay, like how important is it to be like, all right, stop having fun so I can finish this module, or like being like the whole purpose of you guys sitting down at that table was to enjoy the
hmm,
process kind of thing. And
oh
I think
yeah,
that's one of the things, and it like is that like if you've got a DM who one they themselves enjoy the process encourages the players to enjoy the process and it isn't so worried about the end goal or finishing this story or telling how this lore dropping the bbeg kind of thing and they're allowing the game to unfold naturally and allowing the players to play and enjoy that is such like a pipe dream, you know what I mean, that is what
hmm,
everyone looks for in this interactive storytelling that we all love.
I agree. Do you want to read the next question?
Yeah, yeah. So it's another one from Shadow. Are there aspects of TTRPGs that you've taken from one game system and used in another? And are there rules that you would recommend?
Wait, can you read it one more time? I don't have Twitch up.
Are there aspects of TTRPGs that you've taken from one game system and used in another? And are there rules that you would recommend?
So one of the things that when I was growing up, my stepdad's best friend, he wrote his own TTRPG, right? And I remember a way that he kind of incorporated like skill progression into things where it wasn't like, oh, you were proficient. Every skill in that game that you wanted to take a part of he wrote out, did the math for it. It was like a scaled percentage table, but everything was on a percentile die instead of a d20 die, right? So it's like at the end of every session you would get 47 experience and then you could allocate those 47 experience points of, oh, I'm going to take my archery skill from 10% to, or from 30% to 35% with 47 experience points. And so the concept of being able to progress your own skill sets is something I really like and enjoy and try to incorporate of elements of like my game. One of the things that I'm doing with this home game, and it's really inspired by elements of that, of allowing the players to kind of divest themselves and their efforts and their energies based off of what my stepdad's what he called it, rune quest, I think is what he called it. It was 25 years ago, I can't
So he
remember,
didn't
but
create that. Just a heads up.
no, right, yeah, yeah. I think it was just like subsequently named
You keep
also
talking.
that kind of thing, right? But this was like I said, it was he created this percentile table, and so one of the things that I really liked about it was it allowed those elements of complete character customization
Mm.
and being able to take elements of that and put it into a 5e system. What I've allowed to do, or what
That
I've started doing in this, yeah.
so second
That's
edition just dropped
not
like
that same
less
one.
than a
This was just
couple.
one that was named the same, small production kind of thing. That's dope, dude.
Yeah,
But
so RuneQuest is actually it was originally owned by another company, and Chaosium bought it like less than 5 years ago, and
really,
then are remaking it. So that's what you're probably looking at.
maybe.
But they use the same system. What I wanted to tell you with your ideas with the skills tree
Yeah.
is the BRP system actually does that, and
Really.
then on top of that, you can also look into Dragonbane.
Oh,
It's from
I've
Free
heard of that
League.
one.
They do it as well. So anytime you roll and you fail a roll,
Yeah.
you mark a point uh, on that skill,
Uh-huh.
and then you have to roll a die under that. If you roll a die under that, then you can upgrade it each time,
Okay. That's
and it's
cool.
really neat.
So
But
yeah,
yeah,
with this one, it worked in the aspect of like, say you spent the experience and you had upgraded your, we'll say archery to 47%, right? That
mm-hmm,
was a percentage at the percentile work is a if you wanted to hit a target, you had to roll base, and there were modifiers for things too, like plus or minus 5%, but you had to on a percentile die roll under your current skill percentage to
mm-hmm,
hit your target. So it's like a 0 1, a 1%, right? Was the best roll you could do because no matter what, as long as you had some base level of skill, that was gonna hit. And it was like crits were the crit range increased. It was like so if like a skill was at like 90%, right?
mm-hmm.
Your crit range was from ot one to ot nine kind of thing. And so it varied based off of what your overall skill proficiency was in that skill. And I really like that layer, that element of character customization. So what I've done in this current game is I've started like playing with the idea of the items that I have for the characters, I am shying away from giving them standard magical items in the game and instead giving them magical magically ready items with slots, right? And so it's like if this character wants to add a magical slot to this weapon that they have, it's going to cost X amount of money, X amount of time. The weapon needs to be of certain quality, kind of thing, and then they can turn this weapon from it may not be magical damage, but now it's extra durable, so it's a +1 to attack rolls kind of thing.
Mm.
Or there's elements of weaponry that have straight magical slots in them. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna dump, a defender quality into this, staff, or I'm gonna, so it allows my characters to take elements of what it is that they enjoy in the direction they want to play this character, and then take these items that they're getting and being able to like be like, oh, okay, I want to do this with this item. Case in point, I gave one, and it's sitting right here, so I'll grab it. It is the guy's amazing. So I gave him a stone granite greatsword, right? With it's a +1 greatsword, but it's got a single open weapon slot, right? And like I went through the narration of it's kind of it's an old age stone. It's covered in these vines and stuff like this. And he was like, "Hey, I think it would be really cool to play into the vining aspect of this, great sword. Can we work in like a once a day ensnare cast into this sword?" And I'll show you why. Give me just a second. It's right here. But
He's like, I
oh
made it.
boy,
He's like,
the
I made it.
guy made it, right?
Oh, look at that.
So like chain, massive great sword, and he just like made it all. And I was like, absolutely, we can without a doubt
We can figure out
work
how to
that
make
in.
this work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, so it's crazy that you're talking about some of these TTRPGs because for the last couple of years I hadn't had a chance to play a lot.
Yeah.
This last year I did kind of push myself to play those new systems. We played 4 or 5 different systems when we were at Page. I played another couple while I was at Genghis in February. I played another couple this year or this last weekend in at Gary. And what I'm learning is there are so many unique ideas that are out there that like pull from as many as you absolutely can.
Oh yeah.
Um, the way the initiative system works in games like Shadow Dark is very unique that I wasn't expecting. So everybody rolls their initiative, and then the top guy is where it go is the direction is the person it starts with, and
Okay.
then the second best is the direction it goes. So and you roll every round. So everybody shifts on who's getting, but for the guy who's actually putting a ton of power into getting to go first, he still gets that opportunity to not lose that if us just picking randomly who starts first.
Well, that's cool.
So, and then they have the torch thing in Shadow Dark.
Yeah.
BRP does the skill set thing like you were talking about, and that's Call of Cthulhu, that's Pendragon, that's
Yeah.
RuneQuest, all those guys. Anything from Chaosium is done with that system that you're talking about, where the skill tree is based on can you roll underneath that
But
percentage.
beneath, right? And
Yeah.
I always thought that was a cool concept and so different of a mindset within like mainstream
Mm-hmm.
TTRPGs because it's like otherwise it's always the higher the better. And in these game systems, it's like the lower is the better.
Right. Which is interesting because if you think about old school D&D, it was the lower the
Yeah.
better. Because
Yeah.
that's when we got THACO
Like
involved.
tobacco and everything. Yep, exactly.
So, but it was weird because like even that was the other thing I experienced this first edition that I didn't know about is that every challenge rating has a different set of numbers you have to hit too. So armor rating is based on so if the creature had an armor rating of 5, this is the number you had to hit. If they had an armor rating of 4, it was a different number you had to hit. So it was
Mhm.
very different than what we were used to, where everything is that's their armor class and that's what you got to hit. Like that makes,
Right?
but no,
It's
it
not,
didn't
yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought
To hit
that
armor
was really
class
neat.
0.
Yeah, armor class 0. Like I had my one character had a -1,
Yeah.
so it was weird to see that. But then it was like,
You're like,
well, what
what
do I
the?
need to roll? And they're like, oh, you need to roll an 18. It's like, oh, but I was like, okay. And I was like, I don't. Why am I rolling higher if I? It's like,
Why
yeah,
is
it's confusing.
why
Um,
is everything upside
why
down?
is everything upside down? Like, I feel like it was just a cruel joke that Gary came up with back then. I'm sure there was reasoning behind it, but I was like, why? This makes no sense. But
Well, and it's so crazy too, right? So because if you think about that, right, in itself, you look at every dice creator in the world right now, right? Where do they put like the logo, the big number?
yep.
On the 20. It's not on the 1, it's on the 20.
Ooh, unless you're playing the One Ring.
Oh, does that have it on the 1?
They have it on the 1 and the 12 because they roll a
Nice.
d12. So Sauron's die is on the 12 or on the 1. So, that's Sauron's eye. It's the worst thing that could happen to you.
That's
So,
cool.
but they do. And there are a few die where like the I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna drop the F bomb for a second because it's what the dice say. But it's like you
I,
get a D20 and one says
yep,
fuck you and one says fuck me because it's
yep.
like which one are
I've
we
got
actually
that
gonna
set.
be? So yeah.
Like,
So every once in a while you do get those opportunities. I'm gonna drop this to Chuck because Chuck's a little. He's been playing some different systems as well.
yeah.
What is a rule set that you like in a TTRPG that is not D&D?
Oh God. I enjoyed the Magic set. Oh God, my camera just went all
Yeah,
fuzzy.
dude. Pop
I
yourself.
enjoyed. It doesn't. It's whatever.
It's fine.
I enjoyed actually the magic rule system in Shadow Dark,
Hmm.
where it's you can continue to cast your spell until you fail a roll. It's not spell slots. It's
Yeah.
as long as you can keep using it and successfully hitting, you can keep using it. But once you fail the roll, you can no longer cast it for the rest of the day.
Rips it off.
Yeah.
That is cool. I like that.
And that can be anything too. Like,
Yeah,
so your cleric gets screwed.
Yeah.
If he casts Cure Wounds, and guess what? You botch the first round. Guess what? For the
no
entire day,
more.
you no longer have Cure Wounds.
And
You got to figure
thematically, it
out your
kind of makes
life.
sense. I mean, if you
Yeah.
bungle it up, like, oh shit, now
Yeah.
no.
Now I can't do this, and
Yeah,
I've got to
right.
figure it out. Um, yeah. Well, I could sit here and
That's
do
a
an
whole other
entire
conversation.
day on Shadow Dark alone. I'm so excited about this system.
Oh
Um,
man.
I'm gonna preach it to the world right now because I just spent a dumb amount of money on the Kickstarter alone.
But I've also kind of enjoyed the Essence 20 system. You know
Mhm.
how they roll, because you have not just the D20. The D20 isn't the focal point.
Right.
It's the additional skill die that you have, like either the D2, 4, 6, 8, all
Yeah.
the way up to 12, and the specialization of being able to roll all those dice if you're specialized or what,
Right.
That's kind of cool.
Um, so the critical really matters on the skill dice, not so much on the D20 itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is crazy to think
I,
about though too, because you're like, oh, on a D4, like,
Yeah,
I got
like
four
I can
options
get
in
a
it.
15 on my D20, but if I, say I roll a D6 as my skill,
And roll
and
six.
hit a 6, I crit if I
that's
hit.
cool.
If
I
you
like
if you
that.
hit. Now that's the
Yeah,
Yeah.
difference. That's the difference. So if you're like, hey, I got an 8 on my D20 and I got a 6, even though I got the 6, which means I technically critted, if I don't pass the check, it doesn't matter.
exactly.
Yeah. Which
Have
I
either of
like
you
that too.
guys tried to play the just because like it's conceptualized, I think it's cool. If you guys tried to play the Dagger Heart,
I haven't yet. Um,
the twin D12 is like I have not like I've never seen that before. I've always thought
yeah.
it looks like a super cool concept, but I haven't had a chance to try it out yet.
I mean, they do twin D12 for the One Ring system as well, but that's only if you're rolling with advantage or disadvantage. So it's a D12 system. Um, otherwise,
Speaking
um,
of D12s, I mean, we got to try out Nuked, and that was an interesting roll set.
Nuked is a brand new game coming out by a friend of mine, Maxwell Nix, who I will tell you, there was one thing about this game that really caught my attention. If you wanna roll dice, this is the game for you.
Yeah,
Like average rolls is like 5 dice. Like it's so much fun to just be like, gah, and
you're
just
rolling
drop
3D12
Oh,
in any decision.
3d12s in any decision. So like you're always
cool.
rolling just a handful of dice, and it's based in a scientific or a science fiction world. So like
Messed up Fallout.
guns are like 8d6. You're like, yes, let's play some let's play some casino games right now. Like that's what I
Yeah,
feel
really.
like. Or like 4d8. Like it's such a massive amount of numbers, but it's just so much fun to roll that many dice at once. Uh, so yeah, the I think every system really I'm starting to pull little things from. But I think right now my systems that I'm just talking about right now is the One Ring and Shadow Dark. I'm stuck. Uh, I've you know I they and then Shadow Dark just came out with a new version of it that's more sci-fi based called Dark Space. But they still utilize the same mechanic the main mechanic of Shadow Dark is though is that light goes out. So you
Hmm.
have to keep on torches. You have to keep on energy cells, which is what they use in dark space. The cool thing with dark space is everything uses energy, so you can you have to make choices. Does your respirator, if your respirator is needed,
Oh,
does your gun, if you're shooting, you lose energy. You have a glow rod if you're trying to get new dark areas. So then you can. But it's cool though because if you're like, I'm in combat, my respirator's dying, and my glow stick is not dead yet. Like, do I take the risk to pull from that to
wow,
plug into
man.
this because I only have that opportunity.
That's
Um,
cool.
so, uh,
We
but yeah, we could talk about this all night. It'd be great, but I got to close
do
down
have to
here.
wrap up.
We got to wrap up here, and we're gonna wrap up here just with that right there as Joel 1B just popped in. Mysticon 2025. That's the big year. It's this year.
Yep.
It's coming up. Um, do we know around what time?
We're looking at we're around the same time frame. We're looking at the end of October, tentatively right now, based off of venue availability, which we just met with another venue the last week. We met with the venue the week before, so we're in talks. But right now, tentatively, we're looking at October 25 and 26.
All right, I could actually make that one.
Well, I hope so.
Well, I'm just thinking because Thailand is at the beginning of October, so
Oh, see there. Well, and we also like we went through heavily and like tried to search other conventions across the
yeah.
country and like tried to pick a weekend that wasn't overlapping too many. Like literally the weekend before was the other option, but then we're like, oh, like TwitchCon is literally in like San Diego Comic, like San Diego
Oh yeah,
Convention
that
Center
might not be
that
smart.
weekend. So we're like, okay, let's push it to the next weekend. So right now
Yeah.
we're heavily looking at leaning into 25, 26 October.
Have you looked into maybe doing the Halloween weekend, or do you think it'd be dangerous?
I don't think we're opposed to it. I know we definitely wanted to keep it like before Halloween, just due to the
Right.
fact of like if I know there's a one like if we're looking at like venue spacing and stuff like that, and then crowd competition, there's a lot of like people that are going to be going to Halloween parties and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
We wanted to same as we did last year. We encourage cosplay, and we'll do another cosplay competition. But encourage people like, hey, wear your Halloween costume. Like, come
Right. Yeah.
have fun,
Come
hang
enjoy
out.
it.
Like, um, and that's what was part of the reason we picked when we did last year was like, hey, this is at the end of con season for the summer after Comic Con, but before everything starts slowing down for the holidays.
Right. And it was good. It was a good time. And Carlsbad was beautiful that weekend. Like, oh my
Dude,
goodness, it was
so
great.
pretty.
Um, yeah. No. Like I said before, I'd love to come back out and hang out with you guys, run some games. If we can get Beaker out there too, that'd be great.
That'd be so
Because
cool.
I need a I need a handler. I need somebody to take care of
Yeah,
me when I'm running
You need
around.
an adult.
I do. I
he
need an
does. He
adult. I
needs an
need an
adult.
adult.
Yeah, he needs a damn
Um,
leash on his back.
yeah, I do.
Like the little kid
Yeah,
backpack.
exactly.
Yeah,
Put a little backpack on. I'm like, no.
No,
yeah.
nope. You're talking to this person. Come back.
Ooh, shiny. And
Oh, that's
gone. James is gone. 3 days later, the end
Uh,
of Gary Con, James.
yeah.
no, it's not that bad, but it's pretty bad. Uh, anyway, Chris, thanks for coming on, and hanging out with us at the tavern. This has been some great conversations. I hope people that had questions got all your questions answered. Um, Make sure you go check out the Forever DM. He's got some pretty cool stuff. He's always taking videos on what his players are doing. They don't do a live play thing, but they do breakdowns, and they kind of give a synopsis of like what their adventures are, in a unique way. Also, keep an eye out for Mysticon. It's a fun little adventure that you can come out to San Diego and hang out with all of us. If we can get enough hype, I'll come out and run a bunch of games. I don't care. It's a lot of fun.
Nice.
Um, and we'll bring Beaker too.
Yeah.
No live plays yet. Looking at starting live plays within the next, hopefully, 2 months. So
Okay.
Ooh.
4-hour live plays are a different world, bro. I'm just
You're
gonna
telling
give you
me,
that heads
man.
up.
Why do you think I got so frustrated before when my camera was doing it? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me
No,
right
I
now?
feel you. I feel you. Anyway, I hope everybody had a good time. Thanks for all the new people that have hopped in here. Real quick, just a quick shout out. If you love music, Monument Studios is the way to go. They sponsored us for last year. They have over 5,000 professional audio sounds, and they are growing quickly. Um, if you have logged in the last 24 hours, I'm sorry. There was a mad rush as it opened, which is not a bad thing. It just means that they got a lot more excitement than they were even expecting, which is awesome. It also means more sounds for us in the future. Canadian Dice is our dice sponsor for the year. Go check them out and get your 15% off with Misfit 15. And then, of course, our apparel company is Dungeon Grandmaster. He's out there creating apparel for both myself and Beaker. We're also going to be dropping an entire line for Dress to Quest, and who knows what else will be coming in the near future. Of course, this is Tavern Talks, is where we do our interview show, where we have fun and talk to a bunch of people. And I have no script whatsoever ever created. Tomorrow, go hang out with Beaker. He's going to be working on something new, right? Or are you
I think
finishing up?
so. I finished Grandpa.
Oh yeah, Gundam's
Yeah.
created. Gundam's done. So he's going to show off what Grandpa looks like, and then he's going to pick a new project. Maybe it'll be some more painting. Maybe another Gundam. We'll find out. Maybe
Yeah.
Legos. Who knows? He's got a whole bunch of stuff over there. Uh, and yeah, keep an eye out for our newest show coming out here soon. We just picked the name of it. It's called Myths of Moria, and we're excited. We've got a whole giant cast, and we're getting ready to dive. It's going to be a lot of fun. Super psyched. Anyway, thank you all. Raise your glasses high. This is Last Call. We'll see you guys all next week for another episode of Tavern Talks. Stick around as we raid some friends.